Hello, Grade Schools. Today I'm going to talk about the successes and the failures of the League of Nations of the 1920s. So go ahead and get out a piece of paper and a pen and write that information down. Go ahead and put that as your heading. And then when you're ready, come with me to the next slide. First, we're going to talk about the 6 successes of the League of Nations. And I have a memory word for you, Sambach, right here. Okay. The memory words are going to be very helpful because this is just a lot of little battles that there's not going to be a lot of information, so it'll help you keep track of which battles you should learn in order to prove that either the League of Nations was a success or a failure. So go ahead and pause and write that down, and we'll move on to the first success. Okay, first we're going to look at Silesia, Upper Silesia. And I want to give you an idea of where it is. So here's our map right now of Europe. And you can see here is Germany, here is Poland, here is Czechoslovakia. So it's right here in this corner, right here. So what happened is this area right here was in dispute. They wanted to have a vote, a plebiscite, to decide who gets it, whether Germany gets it or whether Poland gets it. Okay, and the vote was very tight. They could not decide who actually had won the election, and so a lot of riots followed, and they asked the League to go ahead and help them out. Okay, so the League divided the territory between Poland and Germany. So if you see right here, this orange right here is what Germany got, and this light green is what Poland got. So when you just first look at it, you say, oh, Germany got most of the land, Poland got very little. And that is true, but the area that Poland got is a lot more important because it had a lot of, it was a very good, prosperous industrial area where Poland could make a lot of money on it. So Germans were very upset by this loss. Even though they theoretically won with most land, they lost a lot of the good, rich industrial areas. So that is the S in Sambach, Silesia, or Upper Silesia. Go ahead and take these notes and pause the video here, and I'll move on to the A in Sambach. Now the A is Åland Islands, and many of my students always think of pirates here. They think, Åland. Ireland. So if that helps you remember Åland Islands, just don't put that R in there. Åland, not Ireland. And actually it is in the, actually it's in the Viking area, but you know. So here it is where it's located. So I've got this big map showing you the world where this is, but we've got our Scandinavian countries. Here's Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And right here between Sweden and Finland are some islands. And this is where we have the problem. So the island was owned by Finland, but heavily populated with Swedes. So there was a lot of people from Sweden that lived here. The League said the island should belong to Finland, which it did. And so finally, Sweden and Finland said, okay, we'll agree. And so it was actually a quite peaceful settlement. The Swedes, if they wanted to stay there, just had to be Finnish. So that's your A and Sambach. Go ahead and copy those notes down, and I'll move on to the M in Sambach. Okay, M is the Mosul Valley, and this is in the Middle East. So you can see the map down here. This is Africa, here's Turkey, here's your Middle East, and it's right here in Iraq. Okay, and more specifically it is up here. So here's Turkey, Iran, Syria. So this land belongs to Iraq. Turkey demanded to have it. It contained lots of oil. The League said, no, it is Iraq's, and Turkey agreed. It was actually quite simple, easy to understand. So that's the Mosul Valley. So pause here to take those notes, and we'll go on to the B in Sambach. Okay, B is Bulgaria. So we can get a nice big map right here. Here's Bulgaria, here's Greece, here is Italy. So you get an idea of what we're talking about. That's Turkey. So here we've got Turkey, Bulgaria, Greece, and here's this little area right here. Okay, so Greece invaded this area because they wanted it. The League told Greece to leave and to pay Bulgaria for the damages caused. And Greece said, okay. So it was very, very simple. Very easy, very successful. Okay. Go ahead and take those notes down. And we'll go to the O in Sandbach. Now the O stands for other. And many times, so the K will actually stand for something else. Often people think of other is at the end, but in order to have Sandbach, we have to do other now in order to have that vowel right there in the middle. So these are all very simple, easy things. These are things that the committees did. 400,000 prisoners of war were returned home. Turkish refugee camps were created. They worked to prevent malaria and leprosy. So when we were talking a while ago about the organizations of the committees, and I was talking about the diseases that they prevented, it was malaria and leprosy. Drug companies were closed down. Actually, that's more like drug cartels, not companies that people make good drugs, but bad illegal drugs. There was a tax on slave owners in order to stop slavery in Sierra Leone and Burma. Burma now is Myanmar. And economic advice was given to Austria and Hungary. So those were some of the successful things. And here we've got our refugees. And here we have one of the committees. Okay, and finally, the last one. So pause here if you need to get these notes. And we'll move on to the K, which is the Kellogg-Brand Pact of 1928. Now this is a very interesting one. You could say it's a failure, you could say it's a success. You just need to argue which one you want to put it in. And for Sandbach, we argued it for a success because actually, it seemed like it was, they made an agreement in the Kellogg-Brand Pact of 1928 that outlawed war. Okay, they said, nope, you cannot go to war. 23 nations, so 23 countries signed it, and it was supported by 65 countries. Okay, so 65 people support that there's not going to be any war. That's a lot of people. But the reason why it was a failure is everyone just ignored it. So yes, it was a success because they all worked together to agree with it, but it was a failure because they all just ignored it. So our last success of Sandbach could easily be argued as a failure. So stop here, take these notes, and we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so now to make even, we are going to look at the 6 failures of the League of Nations. And so we've got the mnemonic word Vimkod. I love these silly made-up words. So let's move on to the first slide. Pause here if you need to get this. So the V in Vilmkod is Vilna. Sorry about that, guys. So Vilna was done in 1920. So if you remember, Upper Silesia was 1921. So the 1920 was a failure. So let's take a look at what's going on. So the first thing when I look at this map, please notice that Lithuania is here. Germany is here next to Lithuania. And then we've got Latvia. And if you know this is the president map, Germany is really far away from Lithuania. And we've got Poland right here. And that is because, if you remember, and when Germany lost lands, Germany was much bigger. We had the Polish corridor here, and then there was still part of Germany here. And this actually then became Poland here. Okay, so that is why this map kind of looks a little odd to you. Okay, so this here then is Lithuania. This here is Poland. This is Latvia, and then the Polish corridor, if our map extended, would be about right here. So what we're talking about is this area right here. Here's Vilna. Okay, so right here, all this dotted area, and here's the little capital area that they're referring to. So Poland invaded the capital city of Vilna right here because it was largely populated by Polish people. So you've heard this story a few other times in the successes. So Poland actually wanted to get their area back that had a lot of Polish people. The League told them to leave, and Poland said no. It's basically that simple. So right here, then Poland kept this area. And no matter what the League did, they couldn't convince Poland to leave. So that is Vilna, the V in Vimkod. Go ahead and write those notes down. We'll go on to the next slide when you're ready. Okay, the I is the invasion of the Ruhr in 1923. And as you remember, Germany was forced to pay for reparations, okay, to France and Britain and Belgium and any other people else they fought and ruined their lands. And so Germany was not able to pay its second payment or refused to pay its second payment of reparation. So France just came into the Ruhrgebiet, and took over a lot of the factories and things. And France basically just came in and did it, and didn't listen, and stopped everything and took everything over. So eventually they did leave, but it is definitely considered a failure because France, who's one of the big people in the League of Nations, basically just ignored the League of Nations, didn't go through it, didn't go through proper channels, and just did whatever they wanted. So here we've got some pictures of some soldiers and a French guy. French guy, I picked this one because I love this expression. He's kind of like, what? And so here are some people protesting. Okay, go ahead and pause here and take those notes, and we'll go to the M in Vimkod. Okay, this is Memel. Okay, here is a look at our map. East Prussia, so this is the German area. So earlier when we were looking at Vilna, we were looking at this area over here. Here is Memel right here, and here is Lithuania. So the Lithuanians invaded the port of Memel that both France and Poland wanted. Here's Danzig. Remember, this is the free city of Danzig. Here we've got Germany. So everyone seems to want this little Memel area. So Lithuania invaded it. The League told Lithuania to leave, and Lithuania said no. Pretty much exactly what happened in Vilna when Poland tried to take part of Lithuania, and Poland said, I'm not leaving. Okay, so pause here, write these notes down, and we'll go on to the next one. Corfu. Now Corfu is a lot bigger story. So the other ones are very simple and succinct, but let's go ahead and look at this map where Corfu is. Here's Italy, the boot, the heel. Here's Greece, and this island right here is Corfu. And so what happens is an Italian general was murdered in Corfu, and the Italians were very, very upset. So they basically, Mussolini, who was in charge back then, took over Corfu and said, it's mine now. I mean, you murdered one of my generals, I'm taking your island. And the League of Nations told Mussolini he had to leave, and he said he's not going to leave. And what made this a real huge failure is that basically, when he refused to leave, the League of Nations basically changed their decision. And they said, okay, if you're not going to leave, well, why don't they pay some compensation, pay some money, and then you'll leave? And he's like, okay, that works. And he left. So it basically showed, so that's what this little thing here is that the League is going to support its powerful nations. So if you're a small little nation, like Greece was at the time, basically you can just be bullied as much as you want, and the big league people will do whatever they want. Okay, so yes, of course, Mussolini left Corfu, but the Greek people had to pay a lot of money to Italy in order for that to happen. And there was no actual proof that Greece had anything to do with the murder of the Italian general. They just basically blamed it on him. So Corfu is one that you do need to understand a little bit more. It sometimes comes up in a 4-point question. Okay, a lot of the other ones won't because there's very little details, but Corfu does occasionally come up in a 4-point question, and I've seen some of it. It can definitely be used really well in a 6-point question to explain things. So really make sure you get a good understanding of what happened in Corfu. Okay, go ahead and pause here and take those notes, and we'll move on to the O. Okay, again, the O is others. Okay, basically these are other treaties: the Dawes Plan in 1924, the Locarno Pact in 1925, and the Geneva Protocol in 1924. I want to tell a little bit about the Locarno Pact because that is the one that the duck that is marching into the Rhineland when Hitler takes over that area. Which you won't get until you get to chapter 3. So I'll explain that later. He's walking on the Locarno Pact, the Locarno Treaty. And that's basically what just set the border. It said, okay, these are the set borders. You cannot dispute them. And so a lot of this happened in 25 was after a lot of the people were saying, nope, this is mine, nope, this is mine, nope, this is mine. So they said, nope, we're setting it in 25 and this is the way it's going to stay. Y'all need to agree with it. Okay? So I will discuss the Locarno Pact later, but basically you could just mention that these are failures. The Dawes Plan, just mention it as a failure. The Locarno Protocol of 24, a lot of people supported this, but Britain refused to sign it. So therefore, when Britain refuses to sign something, it just doesn't happen. So don't worry that you don't understand all of those treaties. You don't even need to write the Locarno Pact down, but I will mention it again when you get into chapter 3. Okay, again, like I said, the O is here just so we have a vowel. And so now we're going to go to the D, the last one of the failures. Pause here if you need to write that down. Okay, disarmament. Okay, the Disarmament Conference. There were 2 Disarmament Conferences. The first one is in 1923, and the second one was coincidentally in 32. So you got your flip numbers there. So Britain objected to the stuff in the 1923 Disarmament Conference, and so basically it totally failed. That's about all you need to know for that. So again, like I say, this is a lot of little things. It's basically, you're going to get a lot of 10-point questions and say, how far was the League of Nations in the 1920 was unsuccessful? How far do you agree with this? So then you will have to decide which one is, and then each paragraph, like one paragraph, can be about the failures of all of them together. You could say something like there was a lot of border disputes, and these were the successful border disputes, and then you can just basically state those things in a sentence. Or you say, here were the border disputes that were failures, and then you can state those separately. Okay, so then basically your examples are the one-liners from these mnemonic words. Then when you talk about failures, you can talk about how the League was failing because when the large countries didn't like it, it didn't happen. So then you can talk about the Disarmament Conference here and talk about Corfu. So I hope that helps get things straight. We'll talk more about that later. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a wonderful day.